An overdose death in a prominent Utah neighborhood left 3 children fatherless. Their mother wrote a book to help them with their grieving, but little did they know it was just the beginning. I'm Kathy with a C.
And I'm Kathy with a K.
And this is Killer Destinations.
Today's destination is Camas, Utah. Located just 20 miles east of Park City, Camas is a small town of just over 2,000 residents. Known as the gateway to the Uinta Mountains, the city offers access to outdoor recreation, quiet neighborhoods, and unparalleled scenic vistas. Its main industries are cattle ranching and lumber. One prominent figure in Camas folklore history is Thomas Rhodes. Guides from a local Ute tribe revealed to Rhodes the location of a gold mine from which he was allowed to take gold to assist in the construction of the Mormons' Salt Lake Temple. The only condition the Ute guides gave to Rhodes for revealing the mine's location was that he was not allowed to reveal it to anyone else. Thomas Rhodes adhered to the terms of this agreement until his death. Now called the Rhodes Mine, it is considered lost, but its legend survives in several books on the topic. Historically, Camas was a hub for logging and ranching to support the neighboring Park City mining industry. Now, the city is one of Utah's wealthiest enclaves and known for its large homes and expensive parcels. It was the hope of flipping some of these homes for a profit that drew the attention of one young wife and mother. And it also may have been the impetus for murder.
4 years ago, in March of 2022, Eric and Corey Richens had been married for 9 years. They had 3 sons, ages 9, 7, and 5, and they lived in Camas, Utah. Eric was a successful businessman who owned and operated a masonry company with his best friend Cody. And Corey was a realtor and house flipper, and she typically dealt with high-value properties. At 3:22 a.m. in the early morning hours of Friday, March 4th, 2022, Corey called 911 after she found her husband unconscious in their bed. And so, Cass, she told dispatchers that her husband wasn't breathing and he was cold to the touch. And of course, she's in a bit of a panic. And the dispatcher tells her, immediately begin CPR. And the dispatcher starts walking her through how to do it. So police and paramedics arrive and EMTs take over and they try to perform life-saving measures, but they were unsuccessful. 39-year-old Eric was pronounced dead just 30 minutes after his wife made the 911 call. So naturally, the police were asking Corey, who was crying and upset, exactly what happened the night that her husband died. She said the two of them had been celebrating her closing on a $2 million house flip that the previous buyer left before finishing construction. So as part of the celebration, she told the police that Eric had consumed a shot of alcohol and a THC gummy. But she insisted that apart from the occasional gummy, Eric did not use any illicit drugs. So they both headed upstairs around 9 p.m. Eric went up first and went to bed, and Corey followed a few minutes later and brought him a Moscow Mule to drink in bed. So Corey told police that she last saw Eric awake at 9:30 just before he went to sleep. And she said at that time she went to check on one of their sons who had been having night terrors. And so, as is common, she fell asleep in her son's bed and went back to her own bedroom around 3 a.m. Police asked Corey where her phone was when she went to check on her son, and she said that she had left it in her bedroom with her husband. When she woke up at 3 a.m., she went back into her master bedroom, and that's when she found Eric and made the 911 call.
So, Kath, just a month after Eric died, his family went to the Summit County Sheriff's Department and told them that they actually think Corey was responsible for Eric's death, and told them the story about something that had happened about a year earlier when Eric and Corey had gone to Greece on vacation. And in the middle of this vacation, Eric called one of his sisters and said, "I've got to tell you something that happened. You need to be aware. I think Corey just tried to kill me." And Eric's sister was like, whoa, back the heck up. What happened? And Eric said, "Corey brought me a drink, and it wasn't something I usually drank, but, we're on vacation. It was nice. And there's something about it just tasted a little off. And after I drank it, I got violently ill. He's like, I didn't know that I was going to survive it. I honestly didn't. It was that bad. And the only way that would have happened to me is if the drink was spiked. So if something happens to me on this trip, you have to be able to tell the police that Corey is responsible. So of course, the Richens family takes this to the Summit County Sheriff's Office, and they're like, hey, there's something you need to know. You need to investigate Corey. And the Summit detectives were like, that's a great story and all, but you don't have any proof. There's nothing we have found so far to make us think Corey was responsible for Eric's death. But thanks for letting us know, and we'll get back to you if something comes up. And it took a few more months, Kathy, but something actually did come up. Although they had the medical examiner's report fairly quickly, the toxicology report did not come back in for months. And when it did, it revealed that Eric Richens died of a fentanyl overdose. Kath, he had 5 times the lethal dose in his system, and the lab was able to determine that this wasn't medical grade fentanyl, this was street stuff. But this was also odd because as detectives had gone through the scene, if he's overdosing on this much fentanyl, the assumption is that Eric is probably a regular drug user. Detectives were like, he should have had something within his arm's length for him to have taken it. There wasn't any paraphernalia that were even near him. There were also no other illicit drugs in the bedroom or anywhere else in the house. So of course, Kathy, now detectives are like, we're going to have to take a little deeper look. Everything is not as it seems on the surface. So they first started by looking into the Richens' finances. And Kath, what they found led them to think maybe the Richens family was onto something, because Corey might have had a financial reason to kill her husband. And it started with, the conversations that detectives had right after Eric died. Of course, they asked Corey, like, what was going on in your family life? How are things between you? All of that. And one of the things Corey had said over and over again was that we have no money problems at all. I mean, look at this house, and I'm a successful flipper, and he owns his own business, and this is all wonderful. But only part of that was true. Eric had no financial issues at all. He owned a masonry company with his best friend, as we had said. It was very successful, very highly respected in the community. On the other hand, Corey's flipping business was all for show, and her finances showed a long trail of fraud, forgery, and deception. So Kath, Corey's flipping business was deeply in debt, and she owed more than $6 million on property that she'd purchased to flip. And in fact, the house that she had talked about celebrating with Eric the night he died, it was a $2 million property that she wanted to spend an additional $4 to $6 million flipping. And apparently, according to one of Eric's sisters, he was adamantly opposed to it. And he had actually decided he was not going to sign the paperwork for her to take that house. She needed his credit for her to be able to spend all this money on it. And then just days before Eric died, tax and creditor problems were coming to a head. And she was being hounded by not only creditors, but also the IRS. And then we talked about fraud and deception. Detectives also found that just a few months before Eric died, Corey had taken out at least 6 life insurance policies on him, totaling $1.6 million. And then in January of 2022, so just 2 months before Eric died, Corey took out an additional life insurance policy for $100,000 and forged Eric's signature on the application. Kath, what she had also done is she incurred nearly $500,000 debt in Eric's name because she got a HELOC on the house they were living in, the home equity line of credit, $500,000. She did not own this house. Only he did. Because when they got married, he already owned it. He already divorced his first wife and just got hosed by the whole process. So when he got married a second time, he insisted on a prenup. He was not going to lose his money a second time.
Oh, I didn't know they had a prenup.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
okay.
she had no rights to anything about that house at all. And so she forged his signature, got a home equity line of credit, $500,000.
Cumbered the house for $500,000.
Yep, because she forged his signature. Oh, and then the other thing, Kath, that it turned out she did is that because he owned his own business, he had to pay quarterly federal and state taxes on the business, the estimated taxes. And Corey had said, you know what, I'll take care of these. Let me do it. I'll write the checks. I'll send them off to the state, to the feds. We'll take care of it. And she never did. She took the money instead. And he found out about it just a few months later. And he was like, what, the F and F?
Yeah.
He's Mormon. I'm guessing he doesn't swear. So he's just going to say F.
He only used one.
Exactly. But he confronted her and she's like, I'm sorry. I'm totally paraphrasing.
Right.
But she said she did it and she apologized and she's like, you know what? I'll repay the money.
How much was it?
It was like $200,000.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Crazy. Absolutely
Yeah.
crazy. But despite her promise to repay the funds, I think Eric was like, you know what? I'm just going to make sure this can't happen again. And so he consulted not only a divorce lawyer, but also an estate planning attorney. And he made a new estate plan that named his sister, Katie, as trustee over the estate because it was for the primary benefit of his 3 minor children. And Corey was no longer included as a beneficiary.
She got her inheritance while he was alive.
Exactly.
That's what was happening.
And that was still a lot of money. But then here's the other interesting thing, Kath. Detectives spoke to Eric's best friend / business partner, Cody, and he actually shared another little tidbit of information that was also kind of under the line of these insurance policies she'd taken out on him. Cody told detectives that he and Eric actually carried a $2 million insurance policy in which the other was the beneficiary. So that if whomever died, the partner would inherit the money, and then they would use that money to pay the widow for like Eric's part of the company.
Oh, I see. So like my business partner dies, I get $2 million and I'm giving that to buy out the other half.
Exactly. So the widow still winds up with the money. I agree.
Yeah.
She still winds up with the money, but then the partner has it free and clear.
Right.
But a couple of months before Eric died, their insurance agent actually called Eric and was like, hey, I know that the way that this was set up was so that Cody would get yours and you would get Cody's, but did you just go online and change your beneficiary?
Oh my gosh.
And he was like, excuse me?
Exactly.
And she said, yeah, did you? And he's like, no, I've never gone online. Who's my new beneficiary? His wife, Corey. So, because his agent was so on top of things, she was a rock star in this whole thing. He was able to immediately restore Cody as his beneficiary, no harm, no foul. And Eric and Cody decided never to tell Corey that they were aware of what she tried to do or that they were able to rectify it. Then, just 1 month after this insurance policy incident, on Valentine's Day 2022, so this is just 2 weeks before Eric actually died, Corey made a sandwich for Eric and left it on the seat of his truck with a love note. They weren't going to be able to be together for lunch, so she wanted to drop off a little sandwich, with an I love you on there. But shortly after eating the sandwich, Eric broke out in hives and went into total respiratory distress. He thought he was having an allergic reaction, so he's digging through the glove compartment. He finds Benadryl, slugs it all down, finds his son's EpiPen, and shoots it into his leg. He fell asleep immediately, but when he woke up, and thankfully he did wake up, he told his partner Cody that he thought Corey was trying to kill him.
So a year after Eric died, now we are in March of 2023, Corey self-published a children's book entitled Are You With Me? And then she went on a local Utah morning show and gave an interview. And she basically explained to everybody how the book was about a boy who loses his father but always feels his presence. And she tells the world that it was inspired by her boys' questions about whether or not their father was still with them. So you can imagine the shock and surprise when the following month, Corey Richens was arrested for murdering her husband, Eric. She was charged with 1 first-degree felony count of aggravated murder, as well as 3 second-degree felony counts of possession with intent to distribute a controlled substance. So, Kath, according to the charging documents, text messages were recovered between Corey and a person listed as CL, who it turns out was her housekeeper, but she didn't live in the house with them, and from whom Corey allegedly bought drugs. So, on May 2nd, 2023, just 6 days before Corey was arrested, Summit County detectives interviewed this woman. And she told detectives that sometime between December of 2021 and February of 2022, Corey texted her and asked the housekeeper if she could get Corey some prescription pain medication, and she was specifically looking for hydrocodone. So Corey said to the housekeeper, look, I have an investor who has a back injury, and I'll score points with him if I'm able to, hook him up with some Vicodin. Anyway, so the housekeeper got the pills and Corey said, hey, listen, I'm flipping a house. Here's the address. Can you just leave the pills there, please? Thanks so much. So all of this information contained in the charging documents painted a picture of a greedy woman who had millions of reasons to eliminate her husband. And then detectives uncovered one more. Corey Richens was having an affair. After Corey's arrest in May of 2023, she was denied bail and she remained in jail pending trial. And her children were given to people in her family to care for them in her absence. And trial began last month on February 23rd, 2026. Now, this is almost 4 years after Eric Richens died. By this point, the charges were amended, and Corey pled not guilty to aggravated murder, attempted aggravated murder, and that was for the Happy Valentine's Day poisoning, and she pled not guilty to insurance fraud as well. And she faced LWOP, which in Utah turns out to be 25 years.
And I would think that because Mormons can't do drugs, they can't drink caffeine, they can't drink alcohol.
No smoking, no foul language.
Yeah, so wouldn't you assume their life
all the
expectancy?
Things that I love.
Exactly. Everything that defines you is you. So wouldn't you think it would be more like 40 years as opposed to 25?
Life is actually like 95.
Well, if you think they're 20 when it happens, then you're at least 65. They've got them popping off at like mid-40s.
I know. I'm sure those healthy people last a lot longer.
During opening statements, the prosecution told the jury that evidence would show that Corey murdered her husband for financial gain so that she could start a new life with the man with whom she was having an affair. And remember, we talked about Eric changing his will. Kathy, Corey wasn't aware of this until 2 days after Eric's death. And it happened because after Eric dies, Corey wants to get into Eric's safe, but she didn't know the combination. So she called a locksmith to drill the safe. And one of Eric's sisters just happened to be getting to the house at the same time and said to Corey, I don't think you've got authority to do that. And she's like, yeah, I do. It's mine. I'm the beneficiary. And she's like, perhaps you need to talk to the other sister. I think he changed the will. And so Corey got so mad, she hauled off and decked her sister-in-law.
That's such a Jerry Springer move.
They called the police.
Wow.
And so the police show up. Nothing says morning like a chick fight with police.
Right.
And the police actually called the estate planning attorney and she came over and showed them, in fact, this is all legal. She was not entitled to anything that Eric had owned, which, as we said, included the house and most of the contents in the house. And so while that was in the prosecution's opening statements, the defense opened its case by playing the 911 call from Corey, in which she was heard crying after discovering Eric's body. Her defense attorney characterized the call as, quote, the sounds of a wife becoming a widow. And the defense strategy was simple. Prosecutors could not prove how the drugs that killed Eric entered his body. If they couldn't prove that, then Corey wasn't guilty. Now, the prosecutor's case largely relied on circumstantial evidence to tie Corey to her husband Eric's death, and so they began the trial by calling the first responders to the Richens house, which included evidence technicians, autopsy assistant, deputies, all the folks who played a perfunctory role in the investigation. And then Corey's former housekeeper/drug provider was also brought to the stand.
Drug provider. Let's just say dealer.
Okay. That just sounds so gauche.
Or drug provider. I know. It's like drug provider. That sounds kind of fancy.
If you're living in a $2 million house, you have a provider, not a dealer.
Exactly. What are you going to be when you grow? I'm a provider. I want to be a provider.
I solve problems for people.
Right. Exactly. You're looking a little peaked.
Are you tired? I can fix that.
Exactly.
But the drug provider was brought to the stand to testify about how she provided Corey with fentanyl several times in the weeks leading up to Eric's death. And then Kathy, despite Corey telling deputies at the scene that she'd fallen asleep in her son's room at 9:30 and didn't go back to her own bedroom where her phone was until after 3 a.m., good old cell phone records came through and contradicted everything she said. Now remember, Corey was in the son's room at 9:30. Her phone record showed that she was browsing on the internet after 10 p.m. And Corey unlocked her phone at 3:07 a.m. and then walked for 200 feet before calling 911 at 3:22 a.m. That's approximately the distance between the son's bedroom and the master bedroom.
So basically the implication is she had her phone with her the whole time. She was in the kid's room doing online searches or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And so when detectives were able to get search warrants for her phone, all of her text messages, all of her searches, all of her emails were gone because Corey deleted her content. The following day, detectives did another search of the house, and in the nightstand next to Corey's side of the bed, detectives found a second cell phone. And that's where they actually found a bunch of internet searches because she hadn't deleted them. So I'm not going to read them all. Honestly, Kathy, there were like 20 of them. But some of them included, can you delete everything on an iCloud account? Can you delete everything off an old iPhone without actually having it? Can cops uncover deleted messages on an iPhone? How to permanently delete information from an iPhone remotely? If the death certificate says pending, will life insurance still pay? This is my favorite. Luxury prisons for the rich in America.
Luxury prisons. That is hysterical. She searched everything except when you poison your husband with fentanyl.
How do you get away with
Right.
it?
How do you hide it?
But she did find out what is a lethal dose of fentanyl. And Kathy, this part, like these searches were a little freaky to me. She searched for the home address of the first lead detective associated with the case and contact information for a relative of the second lead detective.
That is so freaking ominous.
That tells me strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
Totally. What was that from?
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
That's right. So to add a dash of spice to the drama, the jury also heard from the man that Corey was having an affair with when she allegedly killed her husband. So this was a gentleman, and I use the term loosely, named Josh Grossman, and he testified that he and Corey had been involved in a years-long affair. And he worked on houses that Corey bought for her flipping business, and then the relationship became romantic in like 2020. So this is 2 years prior to Eric's death. And so Josh testified that Corey let him live in a home that she was flipping. And she bought him 2 trucks, and she gave him money whenever he needed it. Kathy, did this remind you of anybody?
No.
Okay, it totally, and this is like not totally on point, but
is it someone I know?
No.
Oh, I was going through our list of friends.
Oh, that is hysterical. You're like, so-and-so's a flake, but she's not that bad.
Exactly.
No, it totally reminded me of like Kato Kalin.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Like just like one of those guys who, you know, I mean, the fact that
He's
he was living
a
hanger-on and
a leech.
what kind of self-respecting? Yeah, just, oh man, everything about.
What kind of self-respecting man goes, can I live in this house you're flipping and have money and cars?
Right. Can I have an allowance, please?
And I want to know why to get 2 cars.
For services rendered.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why to get 2 cars?
Yeah. Why do you get 2 trucks? I don't know.
Did he wreck the first one?
Who knows?
Okay. Inquiring minds want to know.
Dude, I was just going to say that,
Oh
but
my
I'm
God.
like, oh,
We're like on one wavelength.
but that's a sentence, not a word. So I didn't say it. Anyway, the jury, of course, saw dozens of texts between Corey and Josh where they expressed their love and dreamed of being together in the future. In these texts, they would say, look, this is probably more a fantasy than a reality. I have kids. I have a husband, blah, 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 blah. And so one text that Corey wrote just 2 weeks before Eric died said, I do want a future together. I do want you. Figure life out together. If he could just go away and you could just be here, life would be so perfect. I love you. So Josh and Corey plan to get together for brunch on March 4th, 2022, to celebrate her closing on this valuable piece of property. I wonder if that meant he had to move out.
No. This was the one that she bought for $2 million that she was still needed to flip. So he probably had a new place he was moving into.
Oh my God. So this is the one that she wanted to spend like $4 million more on.
Exactly. So it was a huge mansion. The person who was building it walked away in the middle of construction. It had like 20 bedrooms.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? And
Yes,
she wanted to make
yes.
it like a spa retreat or a wellness center or something like that.
Right. And for a cool $4 million, they could do that. And Josh would have a place to live.
Exactly. Nobody would notice if he was in one of the bedrooms.
You know what? She did not want him going homeless. She was a giver.
She is a giver.
She was a giver. Anyway, now when he took the stand, Josh testified that about a month after Eric died, Corey texted him and wrote, I think I want you to be my husband one day. But their relationship soon ended because Josh said things were different after Eric died. Well, duh.
Well, I think he was safe as long as he didn't make money.
Josh didn't have to commit. But now there's this actual opportunity in front of him. And he's like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
No can do.
This isn't fun anymore for me.
You're different now that your husband is dead. Anyway, So the relationship ended soon after Eric died. And under cross-examination by the defense, Josh said that after Corey was arrested, and this is May of 2023, he spoke with a private investigator hired by Eric's family, and the PI told him that Corey had killed her husband. So Josh was on the stand recounting these things, and he testifies, like, I was blown away. And then I started looking at everything in the past with a different set of goggles on. So I was trying to figure out if she did it. And Josh told the investigator about a conversation that he and Corey had about 2 weeks after Eric's death. And during the conversation, Josh said that Corey asked him if he had ever killed anybody while he was serving in Iraq and how it made him feel, which he thought was odd. Now, Kath, he wasn't the only one who took the stand to talk about Corey and Eric's relationship. Some of her friends took the stand and talked about how she felt trapped. And one of them testified that Corey said it would be better if Eric were dead.
So, Kath, a forensic accountant testified for the prosecution, and she said that as of the date that Eric Richins died, Corey had a personal net worth of negative $1.6 million. Her business was collapsing and then collapsing more and then collapsing even more on top of that. But Corey received about $1.3 million in life insurance payments in the months after Eric died. And remember, these are the 6+ policies, whatever, that she had taken out without his knowledge. But within 6 months of his death, most of that money had already been spent, and much of it was used to pay down her debt. So it wasn't able to pay it off, but she was able to kind of keep the hounds at bay for a while. Now, during cross-examination of all witnesses, defense counsel emphasized again and again that police had not been able to determine who administered the fentanyl, what Eric ingested that made him sick when he was allegedly poisoned on that Valentine's Day, and the dates and times of these allegedly incriminating Google searches made by Corey. Then, when it was the defense turn to call their case, Corey Richins waived her right to testify. But then the defense did something shocking. They rested their case without calling a single witness to the stand.
And the defense doesn't actually have to present witnesses. They can simply cross-examine all the prosecution witnesses and make the point that nobody knew how the fentanyl got into Eric's system. Nobody. And so they would just make their point and they would move on.
After the defense rested their case, closing arguments began, and the prosecutor summarized for the jury for the first time what they believed happened on the night that Eric Richins died. The prosecution believed that Corey Richins bought the fentanyl from her housekeeper and added it to 2 cocktails she gave her husband to drink on the evening he died. Kath, an orange notebook was found next to her bed, and in it, Corey had written Moscow Mule and a lemon drop shot. And that was consistent with the toxicology the ME found in his system. The prosecutor also played Corey Richins' 911 call for the jury during his closing argument, pairing it with a timer that counted how long it took before Corey began CPR after the dispatcher had started trying to walk her through it.
In other words, like on the 911 call, the dispatcher's like, do this, do that, do this, do that. And Corey was just like stalling?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, mimicking the defense opening statement that Corey's voice on the 911 call was the voice of a woman becoming a widow, the prosecutor said the first minute is the sound of a wife becoming a black widow.
Boom.
And so what was the defense doing, Kath?
Hopping up and down.
Taking issue specifically with the reference to a black widow. So at the end of the prosecution's closing argument, the defense attorney was like, no, Judge, you are mistrialing the heck out of this thing.
Mistrial Marie.
I'm guessing mistrialing is a verb, is like I used it.
I like that.
Okay,
I
good.
like that.
And so the judge was like, nay, fair maiden, but I'm going to tell them to disregard it.
Yeah, I'll tell the jury, like, hey, don't worry about that Black Widow comment. No harm, no foul.
You didn't hear Black Widow again and again, and Black Widow and Black Widow and Black Widow.
Don't think of Black Widows.
Exactly.
Don't think of Black Widows.
Ever. During closing argument, the defense attorney, once she stopped hopping up and down, argued once again that prosecutors failed to present any direct evidence that Corey killed her husband, and instead, the prosecution asked the jury to leap to conclusions about what happened. The attorney said, the state looks at facts one way and sees a witch, but if you look at those facts another way, you see a widow. And then the defense attorney, of course, closed by once again reiterating, the prosecution can't tell you how Eric ingested fentanyl, They haven't done their job, and they just want you to make inferences based on paper-thin evidence.
After 15 days of trial, the jury took fewer than 3 hours to reach a verdict. Guilty on all counts. Corey Richens' sentencing is scheduled to take place on May 13th, which is what would have been Eric's 44th birthday.
Do you think they timed it like that?
Yes.
So you don't think it's a coincidence?
I think the prosecution was like, I can't do this date, this date, this date, but I can do this date.
Only one I can do.
Yeah. The judge was probably like, counsel, look at your calendars. Are you available on this? Nope. This? Nope. This? Yep.
As a matter of fact.
It was like duck, duck, goose. You know, the saddest thing about this case to me is that Eric had instincts that were screaming.
Yeah.
You know, if he's in Greece calling his sister, explaining how he suspected that his wife was poisoning him, you know, his instincts are more than screaming. And
then it happened again.
It just so, yeah.
Right?
It happened on Valentine's Day. And then, you know, it's like...
And who knows how many other times it happened, but maybe it just wasn't as serious. And so he just thought, you know, upset stomach, you know, what have you.
Right. But I mean, the fact that he reached out to a divorce attorney is significant. He was trying to do something about it, even though he was keeping it on the down low, because I don't think she knew that.
No, she didn't.
She didn't know that. But it's just so awful. It's so awful. And probably part of him was like, is this real? Could this be happening?
Right.
You know, but
am I overreacting?
But you know in your heart you're not. You know, like and you have a wife who just wants to spend.
It's the gift of fear.
Yeah, totally.
It is.
We haven't talked about that book in a long time.
I know. We need to see if we can get him on the show with us.
That'd be great.
Do you think he'd sit in the closet with us?
Of course he would. Of course.
Not that we couldn't do a phone interview, but we'd insist on the closet.
We'd be like, will you come to our house and go into the closet? And he's going to be like, no. I wrote books on this.
Exactly.
I'm not getting in the closet.
And I saw Misery.
Yeah, I saw Misery. That was a good movie. The day after the jury came back, one of the jurors went on Good Morning America.
Hello, attention whore.
I know.
How fast do you think she ran to New York to do that?
Dude, I know. You know that somebody like slipped her a business card, like, call me when the verdict's in.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. Anyway, so she basically said, we originally felt sympathy for this woman, like how sad she's here. She's fighting for her life. She has 3 kids. Her husband's dead, that whole thing. But the juror said when the prosecution presented the forensic evidence, the feeling in the jury room shifted. And specifically, it was the cell phone data that helped track Corey's movements related to the purchases of the fentanyl. And so they're like, yeah, we don't know how he took it, but we know that she got it for him.
Exactly.
And like you said earlier, there was no paraphernalia around him. How does somebody take 5 times the normal amount of fentanyl? And, you know,
I don't even know what that looks like.
And there's no evidence around him to suggest how.
Kath, I know you're wondering about this.
I'm sure I am.
I'm sure you are.
Whatever it is.
Is Corey Richens going to be able to profit off of Eric's murder, as sometimes murderers try to do?
This is a real nay, fair maiden.
Exactly. But the answer is no. Because while not...
Which is why I said nay, fair maiden.
Exactly. Just in case they didn't get that. And I wasn't listening. That might have happened too.
I know, exactly. I know you weren't listening. You're like, but...
They know us too well. But Utah actually does have a son of Sam law that prevents convicted murderers from profiting from their crimes. So a conviction means that she now has lost any proceeds from a book or potential film rights.
Yay.
That doesn't mean the children can't do something, or a guardian on their behalf if they wanted to get money.
Right.
Hopefully when they're a little older.
Right.
Now, the other thing is that people were concerned, is she going to be able to make money off the Where Are You Now? Or what's the book? Why Are Me? Or Are You Free?
Are you there? Or something like that?
Where are you?
Are you with us? I don't know. Whatever it's called. Where the is Daddy?
I think it's Are You With Me?
Okay, yes.
And I only know that because I looked. It's not coming back. But anyways, she will actually, and remember, this is the book that she said she wrote with her children to help them handle their grief.
Right.
It actually came out at trial that she had someone ghostwrite it for her.
That does not surprise me.
It doesn't, but grieving widow goes on. My boys were with me. We wrote it together. Oh, and that guy Charlie who wrote it.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't look at my receipts.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what happened is that shortly after her arrest, Amazon and all other booksellers removed her book from sale. So it's not out there for anyone to purchase, even if they wanted to. Even if it's like a macabre keepsake, something like that.
See, people get weird like that.
Yeah.
So we'll find out in about 6 weeks the sentence that 35-year-old Corey Richens will have to serve. The Richens boys, who would now be around, 13, 11, and 9. And in November of 2024, a Utah juvenile court awarded custody of the boys to Eric's family. And according to news reports, members of Eric's family expressed plans to speak more publicly following Corey's sentencing. So we might have an update in 6 weeks.
Quick question, Kath.
Yep.
Do you know how to download on your phone yet?
No. I know how to download from my podcast. I'd use Podcast Addict, so I know how to...
Correct, but we're basing it on people who have Samsung phones who are using Podcast Addict.
No, they are not.
You cannot get Apple Podcasts on a Samsung.
I understand that, but there's a bunch of different things. So what I want to do before I tell people how to do this... Listen, everybody freaking knows how to do it anyway.
What?
I know, but what I want to do is I want to find out, I keep meaning to do this, what's the number one, what do you call it?
Platform?
Yes.
For podcasts?
Yes.
What is the number one podcast platform used by Samsung users?
Just say Android, because I don't think it is.
What is the number one podcast platform used by Android? Podcast Addict.
What the f*** are you serious?
Yep. Wow, so you already know Podcast Addict.
Well, I actually know how to do it, except I don't have my phone on me to walk everybody through it.
And yet it's downstairs.
But go to Podcast Addict. It's so freaking easy. And, whatever. We'll go through it later.
All right, we're going to take a poll. How many people want Kathy to do it? Just because she made me do it.
Okay.
Peace out.
All right. Bye, guys.